Hello, good evening and welcome. I'm Luis Jaramillo, the director of the Creative Writing Program at the New School. We're so happy to welcome back our friends from the National Book Critics Circle. For over 15 years, we've been honored to host the awards ceremony here in the evening. And of course, last evening we had the readings. It's very rare, I go to lots of readings, it's very rare when you go to a 2-hour reading and the time flies by. It was really great last night. We at the New School are very proud of our partnership with the NBCC. This year, for the 4th year, graduate and honor students from the Creative Writing Program interviewed the award finalists and honorees in a series of interviews that are posted on our blog and on the NBCC website. This is an extraordinary task of coordination, since there's not that much time between the announcement of the finalists and this night. Moments ago, actually, we just posted the 31st interview. This is really an extraordinary opportunity for creative writing students, and we're so grateful to the NBCC. This job couldn't have been done without the leadership and vision of John Reed, a former NBCC board member. Thanks also to Sarah Russo, NBCC's publicist. And thank you to all the publicists for the finalists for bringing our students and honorees together. Thanks also to board members David Varno, Jane Ciabattari, and of course the rest of the NBCC board. I'd also like to thank Justin Sherwood, Ben Fama, Julia Manella Sang-Serino, Sincere Brooks, Lori Lynn Turner, Julie Goldberg, Randy Brown Jr., Pamela Tillis, and Sylvan Simon for their efforts with the interviews and with making tonight possible. And now it's my pleasure to turn the evening over to Tom Beer, books editor at Newsday and the board president of the National Book Critics Circle. Please join me in welcoming Tom to the stage.
Thank you, Luis. Good evening. I'm Tom Beer, president of the National Book Critics Circle, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to the NBCC Awards ceremony for the publishing year 2015. We are delighted to have you join us this evening as we honor the outstanding books of the year in 6 categories: fiction, nonfiction, biography, autobiography, poetry, and criticism. I'd like to extend our gratitude to all the authors who have joined us here tonight, from across the country and the globe, as well as the editors, publishers, agents, and publicists who brought their work to our attention. The National Book Critics Circle was founded in 1974 out of a conversation that took place at the Algonquin Hotel by a group of critics who wanted to establish a set of awards that is given by the critics themselves. Unlike other national literary awards, the books considered would come directly from the nominations offered by the reviewers and the book review editors who make up the NBCC board. Among the extraordinary titles honored by the NBCC over the decades are E.L. Doctorow's Ragtime, Maxine Hon Kingston's The Woman Warrior, Toni Morrison's Song of Solomon, Susan Sontag's On Photography, James Merrill's The Changing Light at Sandover, Louise Erdrich's Love Medicine, Richard Elliman's Oscar Wilde, C.K. Williams' Flesh and Blood, W.G. Sebald's Austerlitz, Edward P. Jones' The Known World, Svetlana Alexievich's Voices from Chernobyl, and Junot Diaz's The Brief, Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde. It's an amazing list, and it's much longer. The NBCC has grown to include more than 700 members from across the country, and the number, and those are NBCC reviewer members. We also have many more friends of the NBCC and student members as well. Also, the number of judging categories has jumped from 4 to 6. It has also expanded to include some special awards. The John Leonard Prize, honoring the best first book in any genre, the Nona Balakian Citation for Excellence in Reviewing, recognizing outstanding reviews by an NBCC member, and the Ivan Sandrof Lifetime Achievement Award for individuals or institutions that have made an extraordinary contribution to the world of letters. In these and many other ways, including the various activities, panels, and events that the NBCC sponsors throughout the year, the organization has grown far beyond what the founders might have imagined in 1974. But we strive to continue and build upon their example and to further their vision in recognizing the most robust and valuable titles published each year. As expressed in our mission statement, the goal of the NBCC is to honor outstanding writing and foster a national conversation about reading, criticism, and literature. Tonight's ceremony is the culmination of 12 months of extensive reading, discussions, arguments, counter-arguments, both online and face-to-face. At the beginning of the year, the 24-member board divides itself among the awarding categories, and in the months that follow, reads as extensively as humanly possible in each of the respective categories. After the selection of our finalists in each category in January, all 24 board members read every one of the 30 titles, a 2-month-long marathon that is testimony to the high level of commitment by our board. Earlier today, we met in a room on 13th Street and talked our way through each group of finalists. Tonight, we are proud to name the recipients of the NBCC Awards. I'd like to ask all the members of the board to stand at this moment so that we might recognize them for their efforts. Several members are at the end of their terms this year and are cycling off the board. I'd like to take a moment to recognize them individually for their work. They are Karen R. Long, Secretary and Chairman of the Nonfiction Committee, Carolyn Kellogg, VP for Technology and Chair of the Fiction Committee, Joanna Scutz, Chair of the Autobiography Committee, Mark Athatakis, and Eric Liebetrau. Thank you. The NBCC would not exist without the support of the literary community as a whole. We could not put together our free public events without the generosity and support of so many people and institutions. I'd like to thank in particular the New School University, and especially Luis Jaramillo and Lori Lynn Turner from the writing program, who always make things run so smoothly. We thank the New School for its hospitality and making their facilities available to us for the awards ceremony. I'd also like to thank these individuals and organizations who partnered with or supported us this year: the Center for Fiction, the Library of Congress, the Columbia School of Journalism, Lit Hub, the AWP, Zizava, Wine and Spirits Magazine, the Ace Hotel, Junipero Gin, Bevy Wine, and Acra Moral and Condit. A special thank you as well to our publicist, Sarah Russo, who is super competent and spreads the word about the NBCC widely. And a very special thanks to the unflappable David Varno, who's up there somewhere, who keeps this organization running in countless small but crucial ways. Also Michelle Filgate, who in her first year on the board gamely volunteered to be VP for awards and undertook the complex task of putting together this event tonight. And Jane Ciabattari, who gets the word out about what we do online and through social media. I invite you all to toast our finalists at our benefit reception immediately following tonight's ceremony. The reception is held at the Lang Center, just a block uptown on 55 West 13th Street on the 2nd floor. Tickets to the reception can be purchased at the door there. The benefit reception is the only NBCC event for which we ask a donation, and we greatly appreciate your support. In addition, McNally Jackson Bookstore is here tonight, selling copies of books by all the finalists and award winners, and we encourage you to patronize them. And that's it for me. To start things off, I'd like to introduce board member Jane Ciabattari to present the John Leonard Prize. Thank you.
Good evening. It's so great to see our literary community gather tonight to celebrate writers and writing. It gives me especially great pleasure to introduce you to the winner of this year's award for the best first book. It's an award created in 2013 and named after one of the NBCC's founding members, John Leonard, a former editor of the New York Times Book Review, who with his wife Sue Leonard was also a very influential editor at The Nation. And I want to mention that Sue is in the audience tonight, and we're so pleased to have her with us. The John Leonard Award is also the first award selected directly by the NBCC membership, rather than by its board of directors. It really honors Leonard's legacy, because he's remembered not just for his voracious criticism of books, film, and television, but his lifelong encouragement of younger critics and his unwavering attention to debut authors. In his comments when John Leonard won the 2016 NBCC Sandrof Lifetime Achievement Award, he had this to say about reading and reviewing. My whole life I have been waving the names of writers as if we needed rescue. From these writers for almost 50 years, I have received narrative, witness, companionship, sanctuary, shock, and steely strangeness, good advice, bad news, deep chords, hurtful discrepancy, and amazing grace. John Leonard was an enthusiast, a champion, a critic who reveled in discovering new voices. He was the first to champion the work of Toni Morrison, Mary Gordon, Maxine Hong Kingston, Gabriel Garcia Marquez, among others. And his proudest memory, he has said, was being one of the guests that Toni Morrison invited him along when she received her Nobel Prize for Literature. Which is why the intention of the NBCC is so special in honoring the original voices with the John Leonard Award. We have a long list from this year that was quite extraordinary. Mia Alvarez in the Country, Angela Flournoy's The Turner House, Julie Mironya's Mr. and Mrs. Doctor, Naomi Jackson's The Star Side of Bird Hill, Alexandra Clayman's You Too Can Have a Body Like Mine, Kirstin Valdez Quade's Night at the Fiestas, and Naomi Williams' Landfalls. That is an incredible list and pulled together by our members from a group of 80 nominees. The first John Leonard Award went to Anthony Mira for his constellation of vital phenomena, and he is back with us tonight as a finalist for the Fiction Award for his story collection, The Czar of Love and Techno. The second winner was Phil Clive for his story collection, Redeployment. This year's winner is also a story collection. It's Kirstin Valdez Quade's Night at the Fiestas, a title that promises fighting and kissing and dancing wildly. It's 10 stories set in the close-knit Mexican-American community of Santa Fe. The anticipation of this collection began with the publication of her story, 5 Wounds, in the New Yorker in 2009. That story is one of 3 in the collection that critic Kyle Miner called legitimate masterpieces in his New York Times book review. Kirstin Valdez Quade has been a National Book Foundation 535 winner, a Rona Jaffe Award winner, a Wallace Stegner Fellow at Stanford University, as well as Jones Lecturer. She's been on the faculty at the University of Michigan and Warren Wilson, and beginning this fall, she'll be an assistant professor at Princeton University. I'm delighted to introduce Kirstin Valdez Quade and honor her with this John Leonard Award. Kirstin, please come upstage.
Thank you so much, Jane. I am incredibly grateful to be here and grateful for this wonderful honor. I actually can't believe that my book was chosen from that long list of amazing books. I've read not all of them, but many of them, and they're incredible. And it's especially meaningful to me that this prize was voted upon by the members of the National Book Critics Circle, because these are people who know books. Well, we hear a lot about writers. The unsung heroes of the literary world are critics, editors, and reviewers. Thank you so very much for this vote of confidence and for the important work you do, which is to keep the conversation about literature and ideas urgent and challenging. Thank you also to the New School for hosting this lovely evening, and to the students who did all the interviews, and to the board of the National Book Critics Circle, especially Tom Beer and Jane Ciabattari. I'm grateful to my marvelous editor, Jill Bielasky, and to the others at Norton who have given my book such a happy home. Aaron Sineski-Lovett, Bill Rusin, John Glusman, and so many others. Thank you also to my superb agent, Denise Shannon, and to my partner, Lydia Conklin, and my mother, Barbara, who are here tonight. And also, of course, thank you to two important figures in American letters, Sue Leonard and the late John Leonard, who is such a champion of emerging writers and so committed to promoting diverse voices. As I accept this award tonight, which was named after one great supporter of young writers, I'd also like to express my gratitude to another. The wonderful writer Ehud Havazelet, who passed away in November, was my dear friend and mentor. Ehud is so much a part of my book, Night at the Fiestas, and of everything I write. Ehud changed the way I think about fiction profoundly. As he engaged with my drafts, he always put the characters first, always demanded that the prose be worthy of the characters and that the story honor their humanity. I will forever be grateful for what Ehud taught me, and even more grateful for his friendship. He is there with me every time I sit down before my computer, uncompromising, hilarious, cranky, and unfailingly supportive. Always, he holds me to incredibly high standards. As I type, I hear his despairing voice. For God's sake, Kirstin, why would you write a line like this? And it's true that there have been times when I wanted to shake him out of my ear, when I wanted him to quit pointing out my slack lines and useless prepositions. But his voice in my ear is what makes my work better. Write toward the pain, he says. Don't look away because it hurts. Don't look away. In his own fiction, Ehud modeled the hard work of witnessing. Don't look away, Ehud says as I struggle with a draft, and this voice gives me the courage to be present on the page. Don't look away. It's the challenge that all of us who write books and write about books and read books must meet. The challenge that, as human beings, we must try to be equal to. It's the challenge that has been met by all the wonderful writers I'm so honored to be in the company of tonight. Thank you so very much for this honor. I'm incredibly moved. Thank you.
Good evening. Welcome to Better Living Through Criticism, otherwise known as the Nona Balakian Citation for Excellence in Reviewing. My name is Gregg Barrios, and it's been my privilege to serve as the chairperson of the Balakian Committee. Our task was very daunting, to say the least. Over 40 entries from our membership, some of them with a length of 5,000 words or more, were presented to our committee, and I'd like to thank them at this time for that industrious task. Since then, in 2012, the Balakian citation carries with it a $1,000 cash prize, generously endowed by NBCC board member Gregg Barrios. I would just like to take 1 second to say that when I was 15 years old, living in Victoria, Texas, we had a small newspaper called the Victoria Advocate, and this book editor came up to me and said, I understand that you like to review books. So that began my journey as a book critic, book reviewer, and I'm celebrating my 50th anniversary doing that today. Before I announce the recipient of the Balakian, I'd be remiss not to congratulate our finalists. Here is a shout out to Ruth Franklin, James Parker, Roxana Robinson, and Les Robson. Without further ado, I'd like to announce the recipient of the 2015 Nona Balakian Citation for Excellence in Reviewing, and he is Carlos Lozada. Carlos is associate editor and nonfiction book critic at the Washington Post. I learned tonight that this is his first year. This past year was his first year on the job. He is originally a native of Lima, Peru. He is a graduate of Notre Dame and Princeton. Before joining the Post in 2015, he was managing editor of Foreign Policy magazine. His winning book reviews and criticisms are available online, and they have some marvelous titles that I think will encourage you to read this marvelous new voice in criticism. Without further ado, it is with great pride that I give you Carlos Lozada.
Good evening, and thank you so much for that incredibly generous introduction and this prize. It's a true honor. I'd like to thank the National Book Critics Circle and the Balakian Committee for seeing fit to hand this reviewing award to a rookie book critic, which means that right now my elation is sort of lathered in insecurity. I have to say something about my approach to criticism, and well, to be honest, I'm still trying to figure that out. I've been an editor at the Post for about 10 years, overseeing coverage of economics, national security, and opinion, when I learned that John Yardley was going to retire. And I thought, now that could be a fun job. So it was really opportunism more than anything else. But of course, when you're trying to succeed someone who's been on the job for more than 30 years, you need to say how you're going to do it in your own way. So my pitch to the honchos at the Post was that I would bring book criticism more to the center of the newspaper's mission. Because nonfiction books are not just great literature, not just big ideas, not just feats of reporting and writing, they are overwhelmingly news. Now, sometimes it's very obvious how you can see them that way. Last summer, I wrote about the memoirs of Mr. Donald J. Trump, which reveal quite openly his facility for deception. He calls it truthful hyperbole. Last month, I wrote about Hillary Clinton's It Takes a Village. And if you want to understand her political project, nothing is better than this book she wrote 20 years ago at a moment of significant vulnerability. But those are obvious, right? Those are politicians. With other books, it gets murkier. So if I'm reading Susan Souther's Nagasaki, is it fair to her? Is it fair to the book? Is it fair to the survivors that she writes about if I decide to put that in the context of the Iran nuclear deal and proliferation today? If Monica Lewinsky happens to give a TED Talk on the shame she endured in the 1990s, the same week that I'm reading John Ronson's So You've Been Publicly Shamed book, is it fair if I decide to put it in that context? Should it color the way I interpret the book? Should I let it? If Renaissance historian Victoria Coates writes a book about the interplay of art and democracy over the centuries, should I let the fact that she's Ted Cruz's top foreign policy advisor affect the way I review it, affect the insights I try to tease out of it? The answer for me in all those cases is yes, definitely, overwhelmingly. And I feel a little bit guilty about it, right? Because after all, these books have been in the works for a long time. Why should what happened in the news that month or that week, why should my Twitter timeline affect the way I look at these books? But I am distracted by all that, or better, I am informed by all that, rather than read a book as solely a self-contained product, or just measure it against some literary canon. I'd like to take its measure against the moment. And depending on that moment, books can make news again and again. Bill Cosby's bestsellers from the 1980s were deemed adorable, funny, cute back then. Today, they are revealing in an entirely unexpected, kind of creepy way, and a newsworthy way. Reading de Tocqueville's Democracy in America, as I did last December, offers insights that would have been obvious before this particular presidential race, or even obvious to me in my first months as a new American citizen. It is, in essence, a new book. To say that books are news doesn't demean them. I think it exalts them. It acknowledges that whatever age in which they are read, they will be in dialogue with the times. And this just happens to be our time. Thank you so much for this award and for your time. It's an honor.
Good evening. My name is David Biespiel. It has been my privilege to chair the Ivan Sandrof Committee this year. The Ivan Sandrof Award is named for a founding member of the National Book Critics Circle, and the award honors significant and sustained contributions to American literary culture. During the 34 years that the award has been presented, we have sometimes honored individuals such as Joyce Carol Oates, Alfred Kazin, and Leslie Fiedler, whose achievements have been so universally acknowledged that their choice needed no explanation. In other years, we have been so pleased to call attention to such recipients as the Dalkey Archive Press and Rolando Hinojosa Smith, who had not yet received the recognition their lifetime contribution to American literary culture deserved. This year's recipient for Lifetime Achievement in Literary Culture is Wendell Berry. And tonight we honor his significant and sustained accomplishments. For his work as a novelist, as a poet, as an essayist, to the tally of more than 40 books, for the reach and dimension of his influence on writers, editors, publishers, all of us in this room, and citizens of the world to imagine and to create and to write of a world where human beings strive to live in harmony with the natural rhythms of the earth. For his writings of the countryside, the pleasures of the seasons, the routines of the farm, the life of the family, and the spiritual aspects of the natural world, for his literature and his influence on writers to create a literature of the principled life. For all of this, he needs no introduction. But you're going to get one anyway. To introduce Wendell Berry, I'm going to call to the stage Nick Offerman. Nick Offerman, I'm honored to introduce to you as an actor, writer, and woodworker. He portrayed Parks director Ron Swanson on NBC's show Parks and Recreation. He has appeared in such films as Me, Earl, and the Dying Girl and 21 Jump Street. He's published 2 books, as well as the humorous memoir Paddle Your Own Canoe and Gumption, in which Wendell Berry was profiled. And finally, he is a co-producer of filmmaker Laura Dunn's new documentary, The Seer, a portrait of Wendell Berry, which premiered just earlier this month at the South by Southwest Film Festival in Austin, Texas. If that weren't enough, he's also built 2 canoes, a small rowboat, and a ukulele. Please welcome Nick Offerman to introduce Wendell Berry.
Thank you kindly. I would like to sincerely thank the board and the members of the National Book Critics Circle, not to be confused with NBC, for inviting me to introduce this year's Lifetime Achievement Award, being presented to Mr. Wendell Berry. I consider it an intense privilege and hope that I've taken a tolerable stab at what was intended by business casual. Mr. Berry has been around for 81 years or so, and in that time he's given us 8 novels, several dozen short stories, 28 volumes of poetry, and 31 books of nonfiction. Tonight we're celebrating a man who apparently does not like to take a nap. Now, the list of accolades already bestowed upon him and his writing is chock full of richly deserved reverence and gratitude. It's as long as my arm and would no doubt be as tedious to hear me enumerate as it would be delightful for me to skip. The kind of awards with words in their titles like National, Poet, Guggenheim, Kentuckian, Humanities, Stegner, Servant, and Jefferson. The type of awards that'll get your hand shaken by the president and by people even smarter than that. I don't personally know Wendell Berry that well, but I have had the pleasure to know him a little bit. Well enough to guess that there are likely things he'd rather be doing than to sit in a New York City auditorium listening to a kid from Illinois pay him compliments. I also happen to know that some new lambs are arriving imminently in Kentucky, their farmyard itinerary inexorably unfolding, fully heedless of the possible pertinence of these my remarks. I would reassure the lambs, if I could, that this to-do was not my idea. But to the matter at hand, Wendell, I'm sorry to put you through this, but I ought to point out that it's you alone who have made your bed, and now I'm afraid you're going to have to sleep in it with me, as it turns out. I first wrote a letter to Mr. Berry in 1995 asking his permission to let me adapt his story, Fidelity, into a film. He said no. I'm an actor first, so I was, of course, able to take that as a compliment. And thus our acquaintance has survived. Ladies and gentlemen, to my way of thinking, this exceptional lifetime achievement as farmer, poet, husband, citizen, novelist, neighbor, essayist, father, son, grandfather, pacifist, brother, and fisherman, with the disposition of a philosopher king, would not have so occurred had it not been for 2 imperative life choices. The first and most consequential of these was, of course, his marriage to his bride, Tanya, in 1957. I misspoke when I said that he alone had made his bed, because he and Tanya have tucked in the bedclothes together now for nigh on 60 years. They've each been responsible for 50% of the bed making, and if there has in fact been any deviation from that ratio, well, that is their business. They're still together, so they clearly must have hit upon an accord of some stripe. However, as Mr. Berry is to be rightly and fulsomely lauded for the achievements he has compiled, I vow that his marriage must be cited in the same breath, for in many ways, marriage and fidelity are the central themes at the root of Mr. Berry's life's work. Literal marriage between 2 people, yes, but also our undeniable betrothal to the natural world and our responsibilities to that bed as well. As he tells us in his essay, The Body and the Earth, no matter how much one may love the world as a whole, one can live fully in it only by living responsibly in some small part of it. Where we live and who we live there with define the terms of our relationship to the world and to humanity. We thus come again to the paradox that one can become whole only by the responsible acceptance of one's partiality. Now, I have to apologize to you for having the temerity to choose a passage of Mr. Berry's text to read out loud. It's not that it isn't beautifully wrought. It's just that with every word I transcribe, I'm then reminded of two other passages I'd like to tell you about, plus a song from Burley Coulter. And then I begin to cry. I suppose with gratitude, although the true source of my emotion is perhaps beyond my comprehension. It feels like coming home after a long time away, if you're lucky enough to live in a home made by the kind of people in his stories of the Port William Fellowship. Like you're coming home to the Feltners. It's the sort of crying that feels really good, and let's please leave it at that. I also happen to know that Mr. Berry doesn't like to hear his stuff out loud, so I apologize to him as well, and I'll try to keep it to a minimum. Trying to live in a manner that pays fealty to our marriages in every sense of the word continues to become more and more of a conundrum with every passing year in a world lousy with innovation, isolationism, and rampant consumerism. As our gentle reporter, sometimes frank, sometimes outraged, sometimes lyrical, but always honest, staunch, patient, and so observant, Mr. Berry has had more than enough fodder to fuel his prolific output, as he's remained married both as a husband and in husbandry to the pastoral acres he and his family farm in Henry County, Kentucky. Which brings me to the second imperative life choice. After an exciting early career of writing and teaching, including stints from Stanford to Italy and France to New York City, Wendell Berry realized that he would prefer to lace on his boots and roll up his sleeves and perform his life's work in the home place and with the home people he knew best. More than that, it now seems clear that his work was only going to fully blossom if he was gazing through a 40-pane window overlooking the Kentucky River. What a good and wise choice he made. He applied his life to his home, and his home, in turn, applied his life to him. And they're still dancing together. The fruits of his fidelity are clearly printed, widely available, and are the reason we're here to crow about him tonight. I recognize that I should begin to head us back into shore, since my introduction cannot help but be insufficient. How could one hope to succeed in such a task? Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the Mississippi River. Our humble honoree would no doubt claim that he himself has not yet succeeded in covering everything there is to illuminate, but those of us paying attention would have to argue that he's taken a pretty damn fine swing at it, and he's not yet hung up his cleats. Mr. Berry's book, Life is a Miracle, contains, among other things, a very thoughtful refutation of another book by Edward O. Wilson entitled Consilience. Before delivering Mr. Wilson one of the most considerate ass-kickings I have ever read, Mr. Berry makes this disclaimer. I am aware how brash this commentary will seem, coming from me who have no competence or learning in science. The issue I am attempting to deal with, however, is not knowledge, but ignorance. In ignorance, I believe I may pronounce myself a fair expert. He steadfastly reminds us, first, that we're human and therefore fallible. Then he reminds us that we can never know everything. And so we must make a go of it in our half-knowledge. And with this as our starting point, why then don't we slow down a minute and love one another? As he so sweetly states, it all turns on affection. Dear Mr. Berry, if you are ignorant, then what on God's green earth are we, your ardent students and fans? I guess we're to understand that you are ignorant like Socrates was ignorant. What did the rest of us do when we first comprehended the odes of Keats? When we first heard the triumph of Beethoven's Eroica Symphony? When we beheld the newly inked Declaration of Independence? When faced with the enormity of such moments of inspired human goodness, there is little to do but applaud through our delighted laughter and our tears, and pay heed to these signposts so erected that we too may seek a path that might enlighten rather than destroy, so that we each may do our best to leave our small place on earth nicer than we found it. We like people who tell it like it is, those who most effectively wield this ability, gently holding up a mirror to ourselves with patience, creativity, and compassion, comprise the body of women and men whom we consider to be our best writers. The select few whose gift allows all humanity to feel that this writing is specifically referring to them alone. Tonight, we want to make this writer feel our gratitude for the ways in which his telling of the truth have made us feel. When such a writer so skillfully imparts the very things that we have forgotten that we need to hear, with a candor that is sometimes tricky to register at first through the din of contemporary distractions, but once we've caught the tune of the thing and felt it thrilling our very blood to epiphany and stark understanding, then we call that writer Wendell Berry, and we say thank you for your lifetime achievement. Ladies and gentlemen, Wendell Berry.
National Book Critics Circle. And thank you, Nick Offerman, for an exemplary way of putting a man out of work. Every time I acquire somebody new to thank, I can't help but think how much I owe, how many thanks I owe. And that if I really started listing tonight the people I need to thank and thanking them, starting with my family, with Tanya, whom Nick named rightly, as I thanked them, as I thanked each one, a little more of me would disappear. Until finally, down the list of ways, I wouldn't be here at all. So to stop that, I wrote a couple of pages. When I learned that this award for my life's work as a writer so far would require a little more writing, I began, of course, to worry about what to say. I thought I would say that I am grateful, which I certainly am. I thought I would say I am as grateful as I am surprised, which would enlarge and intensify my thanks. I thought I would say that critics who help us to enjoy books and to converse intelligently about them are necessary to the life of reading and so to the survival of civilization. And I thought I should acknowledge my assumption that the literary judgment even of book critics can be wrong, and that my lifetime of writing is by no means singularly worthy of recognition. So much, I thought, would fulfill my two grandmothers' expectation of decent manners, and so would let me off, as they might have said, with a lick and a promise. And then I remembered a long ago review of one of my books, along with a book by my friend and ally, Wes Jackson. The reviewer said that our two books, one by a rural Kentuckian, another by a rural Kansan, represented an effort by the periphery to speak to the center. The center, as I understood it, designated the several great urban headquarters of national culture, finance, and politics. The periphery, then, being the country itself, the farms, forests, and mines from which the nation lives, but of which the nation is largely ignorant, which it has too often used wastefully and with small thanks to the people who have done the fundamental work. One reason for the periphery to speak to the center is that it is wrong, because impossible, to divide urban and rural problems into two separate categories. Between country and city, the economic interdependence is intimate, whether or not this is recognized by economists. Also, many city problems have their origin in the country, and vice versa. Those thoughts settled my mind and forced me to abandon my hope to escape this occasion with an easy politeness. My writing for 50 or 60 years has been given to regret for the manifold abuses of our economic landscapes, and so to advocacy for kindly treatment of all the lives involved in what Aldo Leopold called the land community. If this award to my work signifies that it has been read and somewhat approved by literate and thoughtful people of the center, that goes palpably to my heart and adds a substantial gravity to my thanks. Now, I must thank you for encouraging me and my allies to hope that what we have known to be a mostly unheeded appeal from the periphery might at last become half of an actual conversation with the center. And those are my thanks.
Thank you so much, Wendell Berry. Growing up in Berkeley, which is both center and periphery, I can say that I grew up knowing how amazing you were, and it's wonderful to see you here tonight. Thank you for that speech and for the work. I'm Tess Taylor. I've had the honor and the privilege of chairing the Poetry Committee this year, and the pleasure of reading widely and deeply and being in conversation with our wonderful committee and then our board about the poems of this year. And we have a terrific list. Ross Gay's Catalogue of Unabashed Gratitude, Terrence Hayes' book, How to Be Drawn, Ada Limone's Bright Dead Things, Sinead Morrissey's Parallax and Selected Poems, and Frank Stanford's What About This? The collected poems of Frank Stanford. It's my privilege to award this year's National Book Critics Prize in Poetry to Ross Gay. In this age of irony, in this age of disillusionment and moral outrage, it is sometimes hard to find language for praise, space for praising at all. And this is why Ross Gay's collection, Catalogue of Unabashed Gratitude, which traces his life as a community orchardist, stands out. In it, Gay's poems burst forth in leggy, unexpected ways, zooming in on legs furred with pollen or soil breaststroking into the xylem. The book starts with an ode to a local fig tree and weaves outward, including in its sweep praise for buttons, compost piles, Gay's father's ashes, insects, the birds, Gay's feet, and the world. Gay's praise is full of manure, mulberry-stained purple poop, hangovers, but also the pleasure of pruning a peach tree, of feeding a neighbor. Thank you for what inside my friend's love bursts like a throng of roadside goldenrod, he writes, but also thank you for not smoking meth with your mother. In one poem, a robin tells Gay to bellow forth the tubas and sousaphones, the whole rusty brass band of gratitude. Whether you're feeling like you have a whole brass band or if you only have one rusty horn, this book sings. Gay even thanks you for reading it, saying, I can't stop my gratitude, which includes, dear reader, you. We are here to say that gratitude is mutual. We are honored to present Ross Gay with this year's prize.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. Jesus Christ. That's incredible. And it's an amazing honor to be, look, I'm sweating my ass off. Amazing honor to be with all the folks who are also nominated and yeah, to like call attention to the work that critics and reviewers do. That's beautiful work that I love to read. So thank you to you all. Because that picture's up there, I want to thank the woman, Arista Alanis, who made that cover, which is, I think it's such a beautiful cover. Yeah. I want to thank Terrence and Ada, and Sinead, and Frank Stanford and Michael Wiegers. It's been so lucky to have the Frank Stanford book in the world. I've been teaching from it, from photocopies for years. Thank you to anyone who will or has read Catalogue of Unabashed Gratitude. What a weird and lucky thing. Thank you to gads of obvious and less obvious voices that are cruising through this book. And there must be hundreds I could point out, but a few. Audre Lorde, always. Nazim Hikmet, Neruda, June Jordan, Etheridge Knight, and Maurice White, and Earth, Wind, and Fire. Gratitude. And Lucille Bertuccio, one of my first gardening teachers who shared her worms with us, her students, and who was a model of rigorous joy, and who just recently entered the earth in one of the ways we enter the earth. On and on and on, gratitude. And Wendell Berry, gratitude. Thank you to the Bloomington Community Orchard, which is an orchard of trees and people and love, which also happens to be an orchard of poems. Thank you to all the teachers I've had, which are many, but I'll say especially Gerald Stern, who has been modeling a kind of looking for a long time, who has a book called Lucky Life, which is not unlike a book called Catalogue of Unabashed Gratitude. Thank you who read any version of these poems before they were done or heard any version of these poems, and that's a lot of people. I write these things with my friends, I really do, and some of the truest things about these poems came from their eyes and ears, were discovered by them. Chris and Ruthie and Papa and Bryce and Simone and on and on and on. And Ed Ochester at Pitt, thank you for believing in this book. And Patrick Rosal and Aracelis Girmay, both of whom I'm always writing poems to and with, without whom this book isn't even close to being in the world. How lucky to sing with and to you. And my family, my mother and father and uncles and aunts and etc. And my brother who taught me how to read. Thank you, Maddie. And my partner and sweetie, Stephanie, who, when I thought the poems would that would make up this book might just be little practice runs, little play-arounds, she let me know I better believe in them, that something real and true was happening, without whom this book, in all likelihood, doesn't exist. Thank you, Stephanie. And to Kaveh Khanam, which was a dream that is building the world. Thank you, Toy Derricotte, without whom nothing like this book exists for me, whose beautiful, brilliant poems and prose has been the model of literary vulnerability I have needed, without whom, I'll say it again, nothing like this book exists. Thank you, Cornelius Eady, who has a poem for the record, if you didn't know, called Gratitude. I'm a brick, he says, in a house that is being built around your house. Thank you for everyone who has made space where previously there was none. Thank you, those sharp elbows and rigorous critical love. Kundiman, Lambda, Vona, Vida, Cantomundo, and whoever makes space. Thank you, thank you, thank you, on and on. And in case you're wondering, why a book of gratitude? Why these days a book of gratitude? Celebration, exaltation, praise, gratitude, and the rigorous practice, the rigorous public practice of those things is one of the ways we remind ourselves that our lives are the ground, that living is the ground. Those things remind us that being murdered and fucked over and terrorized is an aberration. And to announce to the state or our shared consciousness or our broken American imagination by hollering with delight at our utterly necessary lives, our beautiful, beautiful, necessary lives that we are meant, in fact, to live. If this book makes anyone more able to live, if this book makes anyone more able to love, thank you.
How unfortunate to follow that brilliance. This is Better Living Through Criticism, Part 2. I'm Walton Muyumba, the chair of the Criticism Committee. I'd like to thank my committee members and the board as a whole for a lively online and in-person conversation about these brilliant, brilliant writers and their brilliant critiques of the way we live and read and think and imagine ourselves. The nominees in this category are Ta-Nehisi Coates for Between the World and Me, Spiegel and Grau. Leo Damrosch, Eternity's Sunrise, The Imaginative World of William Blake, Yale University Press. Maggie Nelson, The Argonauts, Graywolf. Colm Toibin, On Elizabeth Bishop, Princeton University Press. And James Wood, The Nearest Thing to Life, Brandeis University Press. The citation for criticism this year goes to Maggie Nelson's The Argonauts. A potent blend of autobiography and critical inquiry, Maggie Nelson's The Argonaut combines the story of her own adventures in queer family making with philosophical meditations on gender, art, and sexual politics, among a plethora of other things. Drawing on a broad spectrum of literary critics, including Eve Sedgwick, D.W. Winnicott, Roland Barthes, and Judith Butler, Nelson proves to be a masterful and intuitive reader, not just of texts, but of contemporary culture and her own experience. She lends critical theory something that it frequently lacks, namely examples drawn from real life, real art making, and real bodies. And in the process, she displays with astonishing presence how she works through ideas on the page, how they emerge, take shape, and come alive. Maggie Nelson.
didn't know how much this would mean to me, so I'm so grateful. Thank you so much, NBCC, and for everyone being here tonight. I didn't write such a long, great thing, or even think of one as Ross just did. So I guess what I want to say is thank you, Ethan Nisowski, my editor at Graywolf, so much. And everybody at Graywolf. Thank you to PJ Mark, my agent, who I don't know why he found me and has stuck with me for so long, but I love him, and Marianne, his place tonight. Thank you, PJ. And I guess what I really want to say most of all is that if you read the Argonauts, you'll know that this book, it literally stands on the shoulders and makes itself come into being on the wild revolutionary work of so many feminist, queer, and anti-racist thinkers, writers, activists, and artists, too many to even begin to name, but whose work throughout time has often been met with revulsion, persecution, or maybe the worst of all, silence or indifference. And I know very well that this book's reception in the world would not be possible without their lives and work. I call those people in my book the many-gendered mothers of my heart, which I steal, it's a phrase I steal from the poet Dana Ward. But I do have a specific mother who's also here tonight. Mom, I love you, and thank you. And last but not least, thank you, Harry Dodge. Harry is my beloved, who so generously allowed me to write about our conjoined life to make this book, and it is beyond lucky that you stand by me tonight and every day. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Joanna Scutts, and this year it was my honor and my pleasure to serve as chair of the Autobiography Committee for the NBCC Awards. Our 5 remarkable finalists took us from the streets of New York City to the struggling American heartland to the vanishing pockets of still wild English countryside to tell stories of grief, family, friendship, love, and art, and criticism, I think. Our 5 remarkable finalists are Elizabeth Alexander, Light of the World, Grand Central Publishing; Vivian Gornick, The Odd Woman and the City, Farrar, Straus and Giroux; George Hodgman, Bettyville, from Viking; Margo Jefferson, Negroland, Pantheon; and Helen MacDonald, H is for Hawk, from Grove. And the recipient of the 2015 NBCC Award for Autobiography is Margo Jefferson. His citation, just, we have to praise you first. Negroland is my name for the small region of Negro America where residents were sheltered by a certain amount of privilege and plenty, writes Margo Jefferson in the opening of her elegant memoir. I call it Negroland because I still find Negro a word of wonders, glorious and terrible. Growing up in the late 1940s and 1950s, young Jefferson is surrounded by every sort of material comfort: sailboats and ballet lessons, private clubs, private schools, sleepaway camps. And yet her struggles to survive the relentless bigotry of her childhood, as well as the pressure to uphold the veneer of Negroland perfection, result in a woman who feels she will never be black enough, white enough, or Negroland enough. What makes her account of these conflicts so compelling is how the author moves beyond her own life, seamlessly interweaving critical examinations of works, as for example, the novel Little Women or the life of Charlotte Fortin, leading to much larger points about race, gender, and class in America. This genre-shattering book is as much an artistic tour de force as an emotional and intellectual one. Congratulations.
Oh, my Lord. All right. We're so petty at even the greatest moments. Actually, I grew up in the 50s and 60s. I was born in 47. I am, vanity, all is vanity. I am just astonishingly, I'm astonished and proud and very grateful. Grateful to be in the company of writers that I read, teach, have learned from. Elizabeth Alexander, George Hodgman, Vivian Gornick, Helen MacDonald. There are others here. It is such an extraordinary time, I think, for all the varieties and permutations of nonfiction, from memoir, criticism, every hybrid mongrel mating of them. And that has, the form is serving the function. This mutating form is serving the function of so many more stories and traditions, some silenced, some very loud, but needing to be revised or spoken to. So I feel very lucky to be in this time. I feel very grateful to have gotten a little beyond the person. It's not me, but it could have been on the cover of that book. One friend of mine called me up and she said, "Are you sure that's not me? I had that knockoff Chanel suit." I did. Anyway, I am particularly grateful to NBCC because I have spent so much of my life as a reviewer and a critic, and I know what goes into it. It encourages both hubris and humility in strange combinations. But without the many examples from the dead and the living of writers taking, enormous risks in criticism, but in joining criticism to memoir, to history, etc. I could not have done this book. It was, I'm a magpie. I borrow from everyone, not everyone, but from many people I respect. How do I live? I steal. I just stole that from Paul Muni. Anyway, I am rambling on. The world in which I grew up, like I said, I was a chronicler, an elegist, a dissenter, a critic, an expatriate. I loved those people very much. I still do, and have to look at them, their achievements and their flaws, their wrongs, with hopefully clear eyes, as we all, I think. That seems to be the theme this evening. So I'm also very grateful to be among those not only nominated, but those who have won. And one other thing, I'm not advocating for a return to the use of Negro, all right? It was meant to signify very particular things. All right, thank you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Taylor. Nice to see you all here, and delighted to present biography. It was a wonderful year for biography, and we have 5 of the very best of the best. So, first, Terry Alford's Fortune's Fool, The Life of John Wilkes Booth. Charlotte Gordon's Romantic Outlaws, The Extraordinary Lives of Mary Wollstonecraft and her daughter Mary Shelley. T.J. Stiles, Custer's Trials, A Life on the Frontier of a New America. and Karen Wieland, translated by Shelley Fritsch, Dietrich and Riefenstahl, Hollywood, Berlin, and a Century in Two Lives. And who am I missing? Oh my God. I should have brought my glasses. I was just too, on the vanity theme. Stalin's Rosemary Sullivan. I'm so sorry. Stalin's daughter, the extraordinary and tumultuous life of, and I really did practice this name, probably why I repressed it, Alexeyeva, Svetlana Alexeyeva, the extraordinary and tumultuous life, Stalin's daughter. Thank you. The recipient, the winner of this year's biography is Charlotte Gordon's Romantic Outlaws. Charlotte Gordon's Romantic Outlaws, the extraordinary life of Mary Wollstonecraft and her daughter Mary Shelley unfolds two stories in tandem. And as Moira McDonald of Seattle Times described it, it's written with the galloping pace of a skilled novel. Wollstonecraft, who died 10 days after giving birth, did not know her daughter, but yet her influence was profound. It echoed and reverberated through her daughter's life. Gordon follows the life and intellectual development of socially rebellious and intellectually groundbreaking mother and daughter in alternating chapter. This mirrored approach highlights the profound way that Wollstonecraft informed the life and the work of her daughter. Opposites in many ways, they were quite similar also. They suffered romantically. They were both ostracized for the way they lived their lives, and both were pilloried for their work that challenged orthodoxy. Gordon brilliantly shows how Shelley was steeped in her mother's ideas, and temperamentally and intellectually, yet they were a continuum of her mother. Most of all, they profoundly use the written word, their own books, in ways that are so profound that they endure today. Thank you.
Mary Wollstonecraft was called a hyena in petticoats. Mary Shelley was called a whore. So was Mary Wollstonecraft. In fact, in the 19th century, when you looked up whore in the dictionary, it said, "See Mary Wollstonecraft." So forgive me if I cry, but the women that I wrote about were such outlaws. They stood outside the pale of ordinary society. And I wrote this book really for them. So to bring them into the fold, I knew people knew about them, but I didn't feel like they had been properly understood for their incredible bravery. Everyone hated them. No one would speak to them. They were called, horrible names. And I really wanted to honor their courage and their independence and their ferocity in romantic outlaws. I want to say thank you, I can't see where she is, to Susanna Porter, my wonderful editor, and Priyanka, where I don't know where they are, but right. Susanna, who said to me, take your time and write the book you need to write. I mean, who says that to writers anymore? Thank you, Susanna. I lived with these women for a really long time in Gloucester, Massachusetts, all by myself, with my wonderful family who are here today, Brooks and Mark, and my sister, Liz, and my friend, Jim, and my nephew, Max. Thank you for supporting this endeavor, you guys. It's been 10 years in the making. And a long time ago, when my beloved agent, Brittany Bloom, said, "Well, what are you thinking about next?" And I said, I think I want to tell the story about Mary Shelley and her mother, Mary Wollstonecraft. And she said, yeah, that's great. I said, really? She said, yeah, do it. Thank you, Brittany. Everything that I have written and read, I owe so much to you. Thank you, NBCC. Thank you, wonderful writers that I'm sitting with today. What an honor it is to be here.
Good evening. I'm Karen Long. It's been my distinct pleasure the last 12 months to wrangle nonfiction with the commune that is the National Book Critics Circle, cranky and brilliant. And if you would like a glimpse of the vastness of the world, look at the range of these 5 exquisite titles. We have Mary Beard for SPQR, A History of Rome from Live Right. We have Ari Berman for Give Us the Ballot, The Modern Struggle for Voting Rights in America from Farrar, Straus, and Giroux. We have Jill Leovy for Ghettoside, A True Story of Murder in America from Spiegel and Grau. There is Sam Quinones for Dreamland, The True Story of America's Opiate Epidemic from Bloomsbury. And we have Brian Siebert for What the Eye Hears, A History of Tap Dancing from Farrar, Straus, and Giroux. And for 2015, the National Book Critics Circle citation in nonfiction goes to Sam Quinones for Dreamland. The story of the opium poppy is almost as old as man, Sam Quinones notes toward the beginning of this devastating dive into what may be America's most extensive drug crisis. A California-based journalist with deep reporting experience in Mexico, Quinones masterfully weaves together individual tales from all quarters of the epidemic, from pharmaceutical companies that downplayed the dangers of addiction to build a lucrative industry in pain management, to small-town pill mills where locals began noticing long lines of patients outside the newly opened pain clinics whose doctor took payments in cash and drove a Porsche, to the burgeoning underground economy of cash, drugs, stolen goods in rural Mexican outposts, formerly known only for their sugar cane, all came together in what Quinones calls a catastrophic synergy in which overprescription formed a generation of addicts. And once addicted, it really didn't matter whether the drugs were legal. Quote, I realized the history of heroin was best told by addicts. The older, the better, Quinones writes. And this is a book that contains a chorus of voices, those of addicts, dealers, doctors, survivors. Masterful and sobering, Dreamland reads like a classic tragedy in which what we fervently wanted, an absence of pain, turned out in many cases more damaging than anyone could have imagined. Congratulations.
Read this. I'm gonna just like cry or something, I swear to God. Thank you, book critics who championed this book. Marianne, thank you so much. This is just amazing. Been a weird ride. I turned this book in and told my wife I have no idea if this book is any good, but I cannot write it anymore. I'm done. It took me all over this country. My belief is, very sadly, that heroin is the expression of the values that we have fostered in this country for the last 35 years, values of consumption, values of exalting the private over the public, over community. This is a story about isolation over community, in my opinion. And the place where I had to go finally to find hope was the town that had led us into it, a Rust Belt town that had been beaten down by every invisible force of the last 35 years, the wonderful town of Portsmouth, Ohio, where the beautiful pool Dreamland once existed, now no longer does, but I believe in that town they are finding the wherewithal to build community that has been ravaged over the last generation and a half. Thank you to the book critics. I want to recognize really my dear friend and former colleague of the LA Times, Jill Leobi, who's just written just an amazing book, Ghetto Side. I really think everyone should read. I think it's such a brave, strong, clear book, and I'm so honored to receive this. I just think that her book is every bit the equal, and I'm so impressed with your book, Jill. I really want you to know that. I would like to thank Stephanie Evans, my agent, who shaped a really amorphous book proposal that something I do not know how to write, into something that actually made sense and was actually sellable. And so thank you, Stephanie, wherever you are. Can't see. And to the folks at Bloomsbury, Pete Beatty for buying the book, George Gibson for shepherding it through and being so supportive of it, Sarah Mercurio for publicizing this book, and Marie and Callie, wherever you guys are. Thank you so much to the folks over there. I would like to thank the town of Stockton, California, where I was a crime reporter, where I learned how to tell crime stories, cover murder, cover gangs, cover drug trafficking, and write my ass off for about 4 years of the most withering crime rate I think anyone's ever experienced. That kind of experience is kind of almost life-changing. It certainly was for me. Showed me where I should go in storytelling, what kinds of stories I should tell. I would like to thank my time in Mexico. 10 years in Mexico was equally life-changing, where I could focus on characters, where I could focus on a changing country, where I could focus on the rancho, which is one of the most important institutions in this country that we do not recognize, I believe, sufficiently for the importance to our country. I would like to say that I've benefited from many great editors, Sam Enriquez at the LA Times, Bruce Spence and Rich Hanner at the Stockton Record. Those guys were just fantastic and helped me understand my own abilities and kick me around when I violated them or when I came up short. My father, as a literature professor, author of many books and poetry himself, told me stories of Odysseus when we were on our way from Harvard to his new job in Claremont as California as a literature professor out there. I was 4, and these things seemed every bit as gripping as a serial or a telenovela or a soap opera. I wanted to know everything and there was about the wax in the ears and the sirens and the cyclops It was a gripping thing, and when I think you are told stories like this early on in your life, you develop a deep love for storytelling, at least I did. I would like to thank my mother, my late mother, who died many years ago, but it was equally important to my interest in storytelling and writing and in trying to understand the world around me. And I'd like to thank my father's wife, Roberta Johnson, herself a professor, for her support through all this. And most importantly and finally, I would like to thank my wife, my beautiful wife, Sheila, and our wondrous little daughter, Caroline, without which this would not have been possible nor worthwhile. Thank you both. And thank you.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Kellogg, and I had the privilege of chairing our fiction committee this year. And one of the great things about fiction is everybody on the board wants to be on the committee, and then the people who can't be on the committee, when we come up with the finalists, all come up to you and go, oh my God, they're so good. So here they are. Paul Beatty, The Sellout, Farrar, Straus, and Giroux. Lauren Groff, Fates and Furies, Riverhead. Valeria Luiselli, The Story of My Teeth, translated by Christina McSweeney, published by Coffee House Press. Anthony Mara, The Czar of Love and Techno, published by Hogarth. And Otessa Moshfegh for Eileen from Penguin Press. So you know the drill. I'm going to say the name, and then I'm going to read the citation. Bear with me. The National Book Critics Circle Award in Fiction goes to Paul Beatty for The Sellout. The Sellout is a bold and brilliant skewering of American racism, among the best satires ever sent to press. In a single sentence, Beatty turns with wit and power and intelligence and turns again until you don't know what direction you're facing. The Sellout imagines a small urban farmer, the child of a Black Panther, the Black Panther generation, in Los Angeles, whose friend, who's sort of a secondary buckwheat, volunteers to be a slave, and it all totally works out. Edifying, horrifying, dazzling, and outrageous, and genuine tour de force. The Sellout is the National Book Critics Circle Choice for Fiction. Thank you.
Thanks. It's bad for me to go last because I don't have much to say, and I definitely don't have a message, so sorry about that. Yeah, I have to say thank you to NBCC first. Yeah, I don't pay much attention to much, but went to the awards ceremony last year. A friend of mine, Willie Perdomo, was nominated in poetry, and so one of the things I noticed was that the Claudia Rankine book, Citizen, was in criticism and poetry, and I thought that was beautiful. And just something that, you know, I think about just, you know, not that genres don't have meanings and borders don't exist, but those things blur. And I think maybe one thing that we have in common is we tend to look in the opposite direction that everyone else is looking. And I'm appreciative of that. So I want to thank my girlfriend Althea. she gave me I could write and know that someone might get what I was trying to do, and even if she didn't, it wouldn't matter. So, yeah, that was important, and I want to also thank my editor, Colin, who, when I gave him the book, I don't know what Colin said. He just said, "What the fuck?" I think something. I think he said something about. I think the first thing he said was that it was so contradictory, and that didn't matter, and that was really important for me. And when he said that, it just felt right, and I knew that I was on to something. I don't know, just two people that aren't here. One person, my mom, of course, and my sisters, Anna and Sharon, my niece Ainka. That's my foundation. And thank you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for coming this evening. Congratulations to all our award recipients, all of our finalists. It's an extraordinary list. It's been a great year. Please join us at the party at 55 West 13th Street. You can buy your tickets at the door, and thank you very much.